Welcome to our alumni panel for the MDS Vancouver program. My name is Milad Maymay, and I'm the Director for Program Operations and Student Management for the MDS Vancouver program. And I'll also be your moderator for today's session. Today's discussion is going to be all about the student experience in the MDS Vancouver program, specifically what students liked or didn't like about the program, what they learned, and how the program helped them to find a job, etc. We will not be discussing any admissions or applications related questions because we will have another session similar to this one in early December that you can register for. And during that session, we'll talk about how you can apply for the program. So we will discuss questions that were submitted by you when you registered for the session in advance. We selected the most frequently asked questions and hope to get through most of them in the next hour. If you have any questions that you feel like we haven't addressed and that you would like to ask, please feel free to add them in the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen. And if you have time at the end of the session, we'll get to those questions as well. All right, so let's get started. Let's go into introductions. As you can see, we have 3 panelists with us here today. They're all alumni of the MDS program. And let's meet them now. So maybe we'll start with Salva. Can you introduce yourself and tell everyone when you graduated and talk a little bit about your background prior to coming into the MDS program and also what you're doing now?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Salva. I'm currently a BI engineer at EA. Before that, to talk a little bit about my background, oh, wait, I should mention my cohort. So I'm a part of cohort 8, which is the latest one from 2023 to 2024. And to talk about my background, so initially I did my bachelor's in computer science. So I did have a technical background before going into the program. In addition to that, I also had experience in the data science field. So I worked for 3 years as a data analyst, and then I decided to join this program. So that's me.
Thank you, Salva. Simon, would you like to go next?
For sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Simon, and yeah, looking forward to answering some of your questions and giving some clarification. For myself, I graduated at the same time as Salva, so I finished last year and finished up in June. And then my background before that I had some technical work, but not as much in data science. So I completed nanotech engineering out in Ontario, and then started moving towards data science through some healthcare research co-ops, and then eventually wanted to sort of formalize all of that. And then that's what drew me here.
Thank you very much, Simon. Derek.
Hello, everybody. I'm Derek. I'm from Alberta. I went and did my bachelor's in mechanical engineering, graduated, worked a bunch in refineries, got my professional license, realized that I liked things that were efficient. And so I started coding everything I could because I was lazy, realized that you could do a lot with data, found the program at UBC, applied, got accepted, moved out here, did a capstone project with a cybersecurity firm. That was 4 years ago, so I graduated 2020. I think Vanessa said I was the part of the fourth cohort there. And then I've been working in cybersecurity since. So my official title is I'm a director of data science at a company called Exiger. They're a supply chain security. And the startup that I was working for was recently acquired around a couple of months ago. So that's me.
Great. Thanks very much, Derek. Let's get into the questions. So I'll just ask some questions that were submitted in advance, and then anyone can feel free to jump in and start. And then if you have anything to add, you can also jump in after that. So the first question I had is about your background. So you talked about it a little bit already, but based on your background, why did you decide to apply to the MDS program?
I can go first. So as I mentioned earlier, I did have a technical background already. And I also was working in the data science field, but I really felt like because I did my degree in computer science, it was very much more focused on software engineering and those aspects. And we had some courses on AI and machine learning, but that wasn't the focus. And I felt like during my role, I had to keep on learning a lot of new things by myself. And that is a great process and it happens in every job. But I really wanted to go and do my master's directly in the field that I'm really interested in, and to also see what is currently in the market in terms of data science, and to just learn all those skills. And because it's in 10 months, so I felt like I could go back to studying and then get the knowledge that I need and then get back to working again, because that was one of my goals. So that's why I decided to do it.
Thank you, Salva. Simon or Derek? Derek, I know you already talked about this a little bit, but Simon?
Yeah, I guess so for myself, I came from an engineering background and really had some programming skills within that, but it wasn't really, on one hand, oriented towards data science in general, and it wasn't really oriented towards statistics. We had some sort of rudimentary sort of background info, and I found that over the years, the work I was actually really interested in was data science and was that kind of work. I think a big piece that drew me towards MDS in particular, instead of, for example, teaching myself and all that sort of thing, was I don't think I could have taught myself in 10 months, or, had that sort of credibility associated with the program. And in particular for me, I'm interested in research, and that's kind of a little bit more of how things work. I found in a research context, you teach yourself sort of what you need, but you end up with like this kind of fragmented knowledge where you have maybe very deep understanding of like whatever exact thing you're working on, but you don't have an idea of what the broad picture of the industry or what is industry standard. And for me, that's really a big piece of why I chose MDS, was being able to get a formalized and standardized education in this field, so I can kind of feel comfortable entering like a more specific domain and saying, okay, I actually know where I'm coming from, and I know what tools I can use to actually tackle them, rather than trying to teach myself and hack something together.
Great, thank you. Derek, anything to add, or should we move on?
I'd echo what Simon says, credibility. I mean, UBC is a great organization. You're not going to get any interviews without something like that. And if you do you're not going to pass any interviews I'm doing if you have like a code course. You have to have some training, whether something that's more official than just a 1 month course. It's not gonna fly. Definitely, I would also echo what Simon said. It's you're going to have a lot of material kind of shoved at you, and you're going to have to process that, and that's for the better. It would be I don't think I would be as motivated enough to consume all the knowledge that I gained in a year on my own. So I would echo that.
Great. Thank you very much. So just to be clear, the prerequisites for the MDS program, you don't have to have a technical background. I know all three of you kind of have a little bit of a technical background in engineering or computer science or software engineering, but you can come into the program with any kind of degree, as long as you have 4 prerequisite courses. So 1 course in introductory programming, 1 course in calculus, 1 course is linear algebra, and a course in statistics or probability. So those are all the introductory courses that we require. Other than that, you don't have to have a technical background to apply for the program. So in that kind of, yes, I know you're raising your hand. I wanted to get into that a little bit more. So what are your experiences, maybe not having that technical background, how the program helps you, or how you should prepare for the program, when you apply? Simon.
Sure. Yeah, I was hoping to echo a little bit of that, especially with the, I think early on in our program, Milad, you provided a breakdown of sort of everyone's background, and I think maybe a third was sort of traditional STEM, either like computer science or statistics or mathematics, and the rest was a lot of sort of business. There was a lot of art or psychology. So it was just very broad, and I found that super valuable in just being able to meet and interact with, tons of different people. When it comes to, sorry, the question you were actually asking, do you mind repeating that really quickly? I feel like
Yeah, so if you don't, Yeah, sorry. If you don't have a technical background, how would you succeed in the program? We did get a lot of
Yeah,
questions from people that don't have that technical background.
totally. Yeah, so I found, so for myself, I had somewhat of a technical background. Obviously, I had some familiarity with the programming. I think so for my peers and friends within the program who didn't have as technical of a background, maybe they were engineering or had no programming, or maybe they had some programming but didn't have as much strong of a math background. I think the learning curve, especially at the beginning of the program, can be a bit more challenging. And I found success for them really looked like taking the time to dive in and understand these things as fully as possible. But I guess my recommendation for those of you who are like, okay, I really want to do this. Um, I know it's going to be a lot of programming and all that sort of thing. I think I definitely recommend, leading up to the program, like trying to get yourself a little bit familiar with, say, either Python or R. I think those are kind of the main things, and that was kind of the toughest part from working with my peers at that time, was just kind of like that first introduction of like, okay, I'm programming and this is a new language, really. But yeah, and then on that front, we all came so far in our skills that by after the first month or two, it was couldn't really tell. So I think, yeah, that's an encouragement in that it's a lot of work, but it is definitely feasible, and there's things you can do to sort of prepare. And it's a year out from then. So
Thank you, Simon. Derek or Salva, anything to add?
I didn't prepare that much. I had a couple. I think I had a stats course in my undergrad. I had I think it was MATLAB in engineering, which was like useless as a programming language. So I think I bought like a Python, like a Learn Python book, and for like 2 months before the program, I was making my way through it, and that's all I did, and it was fine. The program is designed literally from you coming in from very minimal. Like from a stats side, as long as you understand what a bell curve is and you have some idea of what the terms standard deviation and average, they'll refresh all that. But you have to have some base sense. And for like Simon said, the programming you can pick up. It's helpful to have some knowledge, but it's not necessary. You're gonna learn all of the stuff they need you to know in the first couple months programming wise, which I think I saw someone's question asked, like, can you work a full-time job during the program? No, because that's how you're going to spend a month. Every month, you're just totally going to be focusing. If you don't do that, then you'll fall behind and you'll be toast. But you don't need to have massive stuff going in. You just have to have a commitment that I'm there. I'm going to work every day and I'll have homework every day to do. And as long as you can do that, you'll be fine.
Great. Thanks, Derek. Salva, anything to add?
Yeah, I can share like some of the experiences from my peers who did not have a technical background and how they navigated it. I would say that I noticed most of them did try and like learn programming a little bit beforehand, just because during block one, you're picking up on so many new things and you don't want to kind of be spending so much time in the back end trying to figure out what's going on with Python, for example. So I would say you should definitely take the Python part seriously if you do not know how to code at all, so that when you start the program, you can focus more on the learning aspects, the data science concepts. For me personally, I had done a lot of statistics courses during my CS degree, but it had been a while. So I feel like I wish I had brushed up a little bit more on that, just because when you're going through the lectures, it's easier to pick up on the more complex topics then because you already have a good foundation. So I would also take that into account.
Great. Thank you. I see a lot of questions about, I have a chemical engineering background. I don't have a computer science background, those kind of things. So I hope we answered those questions. So you don't have to have a computer science background or a technical background in order to apply for the program. The other thing I wanted to say is that I mentioned this earlier, but in early December, we'll have another session with our program directors, and we're going to be really talking and delving into what prerequisites are needed, what if you don't have one, versus another one, those kind of things. So more technical questions about how to apply to the program. So I encourage you to register for that session. Keep checking on our website for the timing of it, and then you could you can register for that session, and we'll get into the prereqs in a lot more detail. So hopefully we answered a lot of your questions here. So now let's kind of pivot towards like the program itself, like what you did during the program. We talked about this a little bit already, but can you tell us about the intensity of the program? How intensive was it, and compared to maybe people that have an undergrad degree and don't have another master's degree? So it's a 10-month intense master's degree. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I could go first. I would say that I noticed like a lot of my peers, they had previous master's degrees. So I feel like they were already in the mindset of like the master's degree. And for me, it was my first one. So the 10 months was 100% intense for me. And I felt like, especially for block 1 and 2, I had to really figure out a proper routine and set up my own schedules and see what works for me. It was also very important for me to schedule breaks because for me, at least personally, that's how I'm able to gain more knowledge. So I would say that it was definitely intense, and the 10-month nature of the program makes it difficult. But I would say that that is one of the reasons why I picked it, because I want to gain a lot of knowledge in the shortest amount of time possible so that I can, because my focus is that I want to get back to working. I really enjoy that aspect. So if you want to pivot directly into the industry, I would say that 10-month is actually a lot more attractive. And also because you learn a lot more in that short period. So
Thanks, Salva. Derek or Simon?
I remember, I mean, you know, your work, you got your days are class, right? I mean, you're in class 9 to 5, basically, as if it was a job. Obviously, there's mixing there, but your attention is on school from 9 to 5. Maybe you do 1 to 2 hours of extra work in the evening, and then your weekends are generally, I was throwing at least 6 hours on a Saturday or a Sunday to finish the assignments. You could split that up, you know, 3 hours Saturday, 3 hours Sunday. That was kind of what the time consumption for me looked like. And then that's not including any of the social stuff. So I would follow up on further questions. I don't think that's actually where you get a lot. There's a lot of value from the social side of the program that I think a lot of people miss out on, but I can talk more about that following different subsequent questions.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah. Just to jump in on that as well, I think I found it an intense program. I think it was very comparable to some of the heavier, very heavier terms in my degrees. I was like, oh, this reminds me of a very busy, not so fun time. For those of you who have, been in those kinds of situations, it's very much like everyone's been saying. It's, you're at school kind of full time. You're very much immersed with your cohort and with your peers. Once you are finished, the program is designed in such a way that each week, once you're finished class, you have deadlines. It's very structured that way, but you do need to be on top of it because the program is going to keep going, right? I think a really important part Derek said was the social aspect, and doing this kind of work with peers is kind of how you learn really well because you're working with them, you're explaining with them. Speaking to the working at the same time, I actually did work, or I tried to work sort of part-time for parts of the degrees, and I found that I was like, this is way too much. And so kind of tried to change my work to be a little bit more sporadic because it was very difficult to work additionally during the program. I know some of my peers did it and were fine, but for myself, I was like, no, this is a bit too much, and I wanted to focus more on the program itself.
Great, thank you. So just looking at the Q&A, there's still a lot of questions coming in about prerequisites and when you should take them and those kind of things. Those will be addressed at our session that is coming up in December. So please register for that one. It's not on our website yet, but keep checking our website for that. There is no age limits. In fact, I think because a lot of people that come into our program have a little bit of work experience. The age average is actually a little bit higher than maybe other master's degrees. So I wanted to mention that quickly as well. So the flip side is a question that came in the Q&A chat. if you do have a computer science background, like you, Salva, for example, and I think you mentioned this already, but the question is, would it be maybe not as challenging or not maybe too easy or something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's what I was wondering as well. And it made me feel a little bit iffy before like picking it for sure. I would say that again, it depends on what type of courses you took during your computer science degree. So for me, for example, I did take a lot of data and AI courses. So for me, some information I would say could be considered redundant, but for me, refresher was important. As I said, I joined the program 3 years after working, so you would need to get back up to speed with like the new concepts. There are always new things in AI coming out, so the approach changes even just in 3 years. So that's also one thing to consider. But I would say that a lot of them were quite different because, like from a CS perspective, the way we approach AI is different from a data science perspective, and that is also something that I picked up on while working. And you will definitely feel like it's looking at it through a different lens and using it in a different way. So you will definitely learn something new.
Yeah, and also there's a statistics part, right? So some people might have a strong background in computer science, but there's about a third of the courses are statistics courses, right?
That was the case for me. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And the other way around too, if you have a statistics background, a third of the courses are computer science courses, machine learning courses, and then the other third would be data science, visualization, and those kind of things courses. Derek or Simon, anything you wanted to add to that? Nope. Okay.
I would.
So-
This might sound controversial, but I would say that the value of the program is a little dampened. If you know you don't if you don't need to learn Python, then you're losing a chunk of time. But I do think if you love data and if you love predictions, spreadsheets, stats, trend lines, and you're in comp sci, this is the right program for you. But if you're thinking I'm in comp sci and this is a way to like X times my salary, I would say probably you might be unhappy with the end result. That you need, this is like for comp sci students who love data, not just if you're trying to get another career notch. Would be my recommendation. I don't know, maybe, but
Great. Thanks, Derek. Okay, so can you describe a typical week in the program in terms of workload and balance between lectures, labs, and assignments? What advice would you give someone considering MDS to make the most out of it? Let's start with Simon.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. So still a bit fresh. So so I'm sure most of you know each program is set into blocks of courses. They're about 5 weeks long. You have 4 weeks of like class, and then like a week of quizzes, and then week 3 is like a quiz week, so like a not midterms, but a halfway point in the course. I found that so your typical week is pretty standard in the sense that you'll have, for our year, it was courses in the morning, so lectures in the morning, labs in the afternoon, which is like these work blocks. And then the evenings are off for the most part, but you're largely working on group projects or anything like that. It's kind of at your discretion, and you have a lot of flexibility to set your schedule outside of course time. I found, I'm trying to think. Monday through Thursday, the days are pretty structured. Friday as well. Often we'd have either alumni events or, sorry, not alumni events, like career events, or we would have like information sessions or panels would come, and that was really good. Everything tended to be due Friday evening, which is at 6 p.m., which was controversial at first because we were like, oh my goodness, we don't have till midnight. At least that was my unusual thing, but MDS I appreciated it because it forced me to get everything done and then actually take a bit of a break on Sunday. So that pattern was pretty good. I found week 3s to be usually the most difficult just because you had lectures and some forms of quizzes. But yeah, so that kind of paint a picture of what a week would be like.
Yeah, maybe I can add to that because we had the exact same cohort. I think if I'm not wrong, it was Saturday that was the submission day, not Friday. Um, yeah, yeah. So for me, because it was one of my goals to not do anything on Saturday, I need that break. Sometimes Sunday would be like a preparation for quiz day for me. So that's why I prioritized having Saturday off. I'm a night owl, so that worked out for me because I would work through the night on Friday. So yeah, you can prioritize it how you would want. So if you prefer to have like your Saturday off, it's doable. If you prefer to work mornings, you can do like Friday mornings and then Saturday mornings. I know a lot of people would just not do anything in the evening. So yeah, just wanted to add that.
Great, thank you. Derek, anything?
I don't think I have anything else to add.
Thank you. Yeah, so the related question is, are the courses more test-based or project-based?
I think it's a combination of both, right? The quizzes are the tests, and then everything else is project based. I would say the group projects start to increase a lot more in the second half. So for me, at least, that was a good balance in the workload because you're not the only one who's working on that. So it can work out pretty well. So I would say it's a good combination of both.
Yeah, I think on that front as well, how you're graded in the program is you'll have labs that are due each week. And those are very hands-on, practical, project-based, and then you'll have these quizzes. And the quizzes are fairly short and, you know, relatively straightforward. So it actually really incentivizes the practical aspect of just getting your hands on the code and working as much as possible, which I found much more valuable than just memorize, spit out on an exam, and move on. Not to mention the project courses.
Great. Thank you. So how many hours per week, again, we talked about this a little bit, how many hours per week outside of class did you dedicate to coursework and studying, or would you recommend to dedicate to coursework or studying?
I can start. So I think that utilizing that lab time is very important, and everything kind of is based around that. How much work you get done during the lab kind of is the deciding factor of what's going to happen afterwards in that off hours. But so I know a lot of my peers, they would like have lunch quickly and then use up that extended lunch break to also get started with the lab. That way they could finish earlier. So I guess if that was the approach, then you could be done by like 6 p.m. So you're working like 2 hours outside of the lab time. But for me, I appreciate my breaks. So I would take my lunch break and then get started afterwards during lab time. So that way it would kind of bleed out a little bit more. So I would do the labs till like 6 maybe with everyone on campus and then go back and then finish it up a little bit. So I would say like for me, 4 hours. Again, because it was a goal to not do anything on Saturday. So Monday through Friday, that would be for me. But on Friday, I would work the whole day. So it'd give like 8 hours on Fridays. So that's what worked for me.
Do you agree with that, Derek and Simon?
I'm trying to remember. It's
It's a
I
while.
do. I remember that most of the labs that I did, you wouldn't finish. More than not, you wouldn't finish in the time slot, so you'd have to do the remaining chunk outside. So there was typically in my cohort, I lived on campus. So there was a chunk of us that lived on campus that would meet in the computer science lounge, maybe like 10 or 15 of us. And we'd sit on Saturdays and work. So I do remember dedicating at least one of my weekend days to like working. Fridays, I don't know if I could do 8 o'clock there, Salva. I was checking out at like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Let's go have a drink. You're more dedicated than I was.
Yeah, everyone is a little bit different, but I think the point is, and maybe Simon, you can speak to that, but that you do a lot of work outside of the class.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, as Derek was saying, like you'll work within the labs and the lab times, but you won't finish your stuff by then, and that's actually kind of intended. It's why it's a full-time program. I think everyone kind of finds their different rhythm of when they work best and when they want to work. Salva prefers the nights. I think for myself, I would usually almost, it would kind of ramp up towards the due dates on Saturday, just because that's how I ended up managing my time and how my commitments looked during the week. But yeah, definitely was working on Saturday for the most part.
Great, thank you. Couple more questions about the program itself. Can you talk a little bit about the makeup of your cohort and how you interacted with them? I think maybe that's the social part that you were referring to, Derek. Just before you get into the answer, Vanessa, maybe you can share the page on our website that has what Simon referred to as well, the makeup of the backgrounds of the cohort, so how many people have what backgrounds they're coming in with, and whether they have master's or bachelor's degrees or even PhDs, and those kind of stats. So the question again is, what was the makeup of your cohort, and how did you interact with everyone, and both in class and outside of class?
My cohort was split 50 international, 50 domestic. The first month, everybody's kind of still figuring things out, but things kind of, I would say you would see kind of groups form around like country of origin. And I was not a part of that, but I would strongly recommend against that. People tended to click up with, part of the value of the program is hanging out with people that are not from where you're from. It's one of the extreme uniquenesses of this program, or why it makes it unique. For example, I didn't do that. And I hung out with a group of people that tended to be older. Maybe this is like they worked a little bit and they came because they tended to be more social. They tended to realize that there was a social benefit to this thing coming back from working. Like, hey, the industry doesn't work like this. And so there was about 30 or 40 of us that kind of were social from all over the world. And so, these are the people that I'm still connected to, 5 years later. I go play like a Gloomhaven board game with a guy from Barbados that I went to MDS with. And I have another friend who, when another MDS grad wanted to switch their schooling, he tutored her in computer science because that wasn't her background and she needed more in computer knowledge to go where she wanted to go. And those sorts of connections are harder to maybe cement if you're just kind of grouping with like-minded people that just kind of go back to their country of origin or not. So I would say people clicked up country of origin, and there was a group of people that were more social that I was tended to be a part of that I felt had a lot of value. And the people in there were from all different backgrounds and religions and everything. And then there was also people that were kind of solo, and I think that those people lost out a lot. But most people usually clicked up in some way, some group.
Great. How about for your cohort, Salva and Simon?
Yeah, maybe you can start and then Simon can add in. But I feel like for us, everyone was so friendly. You can go and sit at any table and you can start working on a problem. As I mentioned, like after the lab, so many people would stay back and just work on the labs. And all the people who would be sitting, they would just like sit together and then you can bounce off ideas off of each other. Again, going back into the backgrounds, everybody had very different backgrounds. So their approach would be very different, especially for me because I'm a CS background. Everything is very technical to me. But then I hear a very different point of view from someone who came maybe from like a medicine background, for example. So that really helped me to think in different ways and to also understand how people who have different backgrounds think, which is very important at work. So that aspect is really useful. And the best part is getting to solve the labs with your peers. I feel like that is the most important component of the program. 100% everyone should take advantage of it. Everyone is super friendly, so just go and like tell them you're working on this, are you working on this too, and go and sit together and work on it because you will learn so much more than just doing it by yourself.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, exactly as Salva was saying, the cohort is really what makes this program unique. You're all working on similar problems together. You're all from all over the world, whether it's location, also from ages as well. I mean, I had graduated my undergrad and joined this program after a year after graduation. But I was on the very young end of the people in the program, right? So some folks had finished their MBA, they were like well into their careers. And I think that was just super valuable to be able to meet all these different people and kind of build this community that all came together and now has all, some are in Vancouver, but some are, all over the world. So it's a very, very exciting thing, right? To be able to do that and to take advantage of it, because I think our world is becoming more and more isolated, and bringing people together like that in a really intentional way is super valuable, I think.
Great, thank you. All right, so what was your relationship with the instructors and the faculty, and how the question is, how supportive are the instructors, and when you had difficulty understanding the courses or the homework materials, and how are they reachable and approachable?
Okay, Simon, you can go first.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'd say super accessible across the board. They're with you every day, both in the labs and in lectures. And then everyone's online in like a sort of dedicated Slack workspace. So very much accessible, responsive to messages, very friendly and outgoing. Naturally, you're probably going to get along with, different instructors, or be like, oh, I really connected well with, with this instructor, for example. And I think they're also very insightful because on one hand, they're experts in the field, but professors, but on the other hand, they're also really love this stuff because, why would they be teaching it otherwise? And I think that really shines through, because I think in a lot of programs this program is dedicated to teaching, which overcomes some of the challenges that happen even in undergrad, where you may have a professor who's really good at what they do, knows this stuff really well, but doesn't have as much of a passion for teaching, but is, needs to or is required to as part of their contract or anything like that. And that is very much not the case here, as it's a dedicated teaching program. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, thank you.
I will say
Derek?
for me, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go
Uh,
ahead.
I will say for me personally, one thing that I did not take that much advantage of was going to office hours, because I just felt like I could ask my questions on Slack, but definitely go to the office hours. Again, it's the idea of talking about what your thought process is to solving a problem, and then hearing what the TAs have to say, what the professor has to say, and to guide your thinking and to open your mind up to different ways of solving a problem. That's very useful.
So let's talk about courses. So what was the most exciting course or you took? And kind of related to that, are there any courses that you're using in your work right now?
My company doesn't use R, so R was not for me. But that's the thing about this program. It gives you kind of a bedrock, and then you kind of go from there. And you don't necessarily know what part of the program is going to lead you where. Like, you're not going to be an expert on LLMs or when you finish the program, but you have a little bit of base knowledge enough that you could kind of specialize in that if you wanted to. So in my field, Python, it's one of our core programming languages. R is not so much. We don't have, in my field in cybersecurity, there's not a lot of answer keys. So a lot of our work is unsupervised learning and manual curating. So all the unsupervised courses, clustering, all that stuff is kind of useful. And then lastly, containerization. My God, some of the peripheral courses that you learn in the program, like SQL databases and containerization, while you're doing the program, you're like, why am I learning this? This seems silly. This isn't related to data science, but damn, are they important? Because if you're a data scientist and you can't get your models into a pipeline so that they can run and actually add value to the company, you are useless. You might as well just be an academic. I mean, if you want to be an academic, that's not to it. But in the private sector, your stuff needs to show up on the end of some user screen. Otherwise, you're not adding value. So in summary, Python, unsupervised learning, and all the peripheral like containerization and SQL stuff that seem off when you're doing the program, but are actually really, really important.
Great, thank you. Salva or Simon?
Yeah, I could go next. I would say the programming courses for sure are useful, but again, for me, I already had the programming background. Something that I thought was really cool was the course about temporal and spatial learning. I feel like most things don't cover that. And for me, I worked in transportation, so I had to learn spatial analytics by myself. So that was nice to have in a course. I feel like it can be really useful because you'll have to do some sort of analytics in that area when you start working. So that's a good course.
This is might be a bit of a controversial or hot take, but I actually really enjoyed some of our introductory statistics courses because they taught it. I've taken a couple statistics courses over the years, not necessarily taught super well, but I really loved those courses because of the framing and the very data-driven approach in which they taught the statistics. I was like, oh, I actually get this, which I've never had never had before in statistics, and I really appreciated that. So very data first approach, and then connecting it to all the theory, I found super valuable. As for stuff I'm using right now, so I'm actually in a research context, but as Derek was saying, um, the team I'm a part of and just the whole work is very translational, and for wanting to move stuff out of black box, or sorry, out of an academia into deployment or containerization and using cloud services, and honestly getting that initial framework with MDS has been super valuable because at least I know where to start in some ways, and the world of cloud computing is not the focus of MDS, but you will need to interface it with one way or another, especially in the private sector, like Derek was saying. So that's been super valuable as well.
Great, thank you. A few questions came in about whether it's a research program or professional program. So it is a professional program, so it prepares you for jobs in industry, whether you want to go into research or not. That's, Simon kind of spoke to that, but the courses are not research-based courses. They're very much practical and industry-based, I guess you could call it. All right, so let's get into the practicality of the program. So one of the things we do at the end of the program, the last 2 months of the program, is a capstone project, which kind of ties everything together. But maybe you can talk about it a little bit more. What did you do for your capstone, and how useful was it, or how did you use it in your current roles?
I can go first. So my capstone project was with ALS Goldspot, which is like a mining company. And I've never worked in the mining industry, so it was nice to delve into completely different data. In terms of how I used that in my current work, it's like a really nice thing to have on your resume. I feel like it's very, very useful if you don't have data science experience. So that way you can kind of see how things work in the real world. You're interacting with an actual company, you're working with peers who come from different backgrounds. So it's the perfect simulation of a work environment. You get to learn from each other, also from the people that you work with from the company. So especially if you don't have experience in data, it's very useful. And the projects are really cool. So for me, I really enjoy image classification related tasks. So I picked so you get to choose different options in the beginning, and you get assigned one of your preferred capstones. And I picked almost all of them that I picked were image classification based, and I got one that was about it. It was predicting bone cancer in tumors in bone cancer images or something like that. So it was a really cool project, and I learned a lot from that.
My capstone project was, as I mentioned, cybersecurity based. It was a lot of NLP. It was basically matching file data to security advisories, aka vulnerabilities. and it landed me my first, my first data science job outside of after the program. So mission accomplished, I guess, there, Milad.
There you go. Thanks.
Yeah, for myself, I worked with Triumph. So they're actually a research group that's sort of affiliated with the UBC. They run a particle accelerator. But it was really interesting because we were essentially functioning as like a data science consulting team. And what we realized that our project really needed was essentially infrastructure. So a system in order for them to develop and build models. We were working on like particle classification, but the key thing was, okay, we need to be able to reproducibly like develop all this. You'll hear this time and time again that reproducibility is everything within data science during the program. And it was super valuable because we were able to, take a step back, look at their overall problem and workflow, propose a solution, and then implement it. And I've been using some of the technologies and some of the skills from there in my current work because I'm also working to develop infrastructure and find a good solution for what my current position is looking to do. So
Great. Thank you. Just another note for the people that are asking questions. A lot of the questions you're asking are related to admissions and prerequisites and how to apply and deadlines and tuition, those kind of things. Again, the alumni don't really know about those technical admissions questions. So we will have another session in early December that you can sign up for and register for. Keep checking our website for that, where the program directors will actually answer a lot of the technical questions and admissions questions and what if I don't, what the GPA I need to have, language requirements, those kind of things we will answer at that session. So if you're asking those kind of questions in the chat, we won't address them at this session. Great. All right. So let's, in the last about 10 minutes, move a little bit towards after graduation. So what you've been doing after graduation. So questions like, how long did it take you to find a job? Did you get a higher salary? So those kind of things. How many jobs did you apply for?
Yeah, I can start. I obviously got a job for my capstone project, so I didn't apply to anywhere else. I just kind of was like, I gotta keep doing this. My job has kind of evolved, so depending on where you work will dictate how this will play out. But I was working for a very small company of like 30 people, and so I actually didn't do as much data science as maybe some of my peers do, because you have to straddle multiple worlds when you have a small team like that. So like Simon said, I was in AWS doing data engineering, doing data architecture, like all these things to, okay, I build a machine, now it needs to do something, I have to get it in there and no one else is there to do it. Whereas in a bigger company, you have other people that can kind of do that for you. And then salary-wise, it stunk. I had crappy salary, I would say, but I didn't care because I liked the company and I believed in what it was doing, and I do a lot better now. But I think one of the biggest things people could set themselves up for failure is having these grand visions of salary post-program. I remember there was a survey you did, even in my cohort, Milad, of like what people's expectations were, and I still, 4 to 5 years later, can't believe the numbers that I saw. You will potentially struggle if your expectations. This field, just because you have a piece of paper that says data science, this program helps you a lot, but it is no, like, you need something else that kind of, which this program will give you through these capstone projects, you'll get a sense, but unless you have like a drive from it, you may struggle. So I would say salaries can be high, but only if you have a passion for what you're doing, is what I would say, because they come eventually. So if you're a new grad who's jumping into the MDS program and is expecting over 6 figures after you're done this program, I would say you need to reevaluate your expectations, at least from my field and where I'm standing.
Salva and Simon, how many jobs did you apply for? You're more recent graduates, so how is the job market out there?
Yeah, I would say maybe for us, like the job market was not the best when we graduated. Um, so for me, I did want to take a break. So I went actually back to Dubai to take like a 1 month vacation. And I kind of applied a little bit during that time. So I think I applied to like um maybe like I want to say over 4 months, 30 places. And I just applied online and that's how I landed my current role. I didn't do anything extra like reaching out to people and stuff like that. So it worked out, which was great. And in terms of like actively looking for jobs, I guess I spent maybe like a month like properly to look for jobs, but just applying online worked. I feel like the job market is getting a little bit better. Starting like after July, I started to see a little bit more openings than before. So it's getting a little bit better, but maybe not the best right now, I would say.
Yeah, I don't think I'm a great example because um, similarly to Derek, while not through Capstone, I applied to a group that I had worked for previously for part-time, but a different and more data science oriented role. And that's the role I'm in right now. So for me, I think I was a little bit shielded from the online search, that type of piece. But some of my peers, um, even with respect to salary and that, have been quite successful. But they have been proactive in making sure their stuff, LinkedIn's up to date, putting out applications and networking where they can, even within MDS's events, which has been really useful. So I think that while the job market is challenging, data science is very much a growing field, and having these having the experience of the program and of the capstone is quite valuable. I do think it also takes a decent amount of initiative and work to find, a job that you're, really excited for and really passionate for. I think, yeah, it just does take time. And unfortunately, the market has, well, a couple of years ago was very much in a downturn. And like Salva said, I think it is picking up to some extent.
Great, thank you. Just so people know, Vanessa shared a link to on our website that talks about the alumni and students' stats, so where the backgrounds and those kind of things. But there is also a graph on there about salaries, what our graduates. We do a survey, a couple of surveys for our graduates 6 months after graduation and 1 year after graduation, and we ask them if they're working, where they're working, how much are they getting paid, anonymously, obviously. And so we summarize that information on that webpage. So maybe Vanessa, you can share that webpage again with everyone in the chat. There, she did. The link is now shared in the Q&A. So you can look at salaries and what kind of roles people have after graduation and how many people found jobs and those kind of things. Okay, so we have only 5 more minutes left. One thing you kind of alluded to, Simon, I think, is the alumni events, the career events, and how that maybe helps you find employment. And it sounds like you maybe took advantage of some of those. So maybe can you talk a little bit about that? The extracurriculars that are kind of part of the program.
Yeah, for sure. So within MDS, there's towards the end of the program, a lot more career-oriented events start to ramp up thanks to all of Angela's hard work and the rest of the team. So there'll be, I guess, panels and discussing different fields. So some folks coming in from finance or whatnot. It's very regular. So it'll end up being kind of a weekly sort of thing. And those are obviously optional, but they're for you to take advantage of. So if there's something that's springing up, you're like, oh, I'm interested in this field, go do it. Even if you're not, and you have the time, it might be worthwhile because you might learn something. You can also reach out and connect with a lot of these individuals. And I know a decent amount of my peers did that and have found success in doing that from a career perspective, or even just a connection. There's a lot of strength in the sort of weak ties that happen when you like, oh, I met you, and it's like, do you know something about this? And they can kind of point you because everyone is kind of a node and has a lot of connections that you just don't know about until you ask them.
Great, thank you. Derek or Salva, anything you want to add to that? No? Great. Okay. So maybe time for one or two more questions. So again, can you describe your day in your role as a data scientist? So like, what are you doing right now? How does a day of a data scientist look like?
I'm a terrible example because I don't really do a lot of data science these days. I manage a team of developers. We do some data science works, but most of it's not. So I would just say that a lot of the peripheral work regarding implementing data science projects is what I spend a lot of time in. So what that looks like is using GitHub to push to a repo, building a pipeline to deploy that repo to some container, managing the AWS resource, and then auditing its performance, and then iterating. So now you have an application that's doing something in an automated fashion. You have to periodically update it. Now you have to do another set of PRs, another testing. You have to audit again. And then, okay, well, let's go investigate something else. So kind of looks like that, just kind of repeated over and over again.
Great, thank you. What does your day look like, Salva?
Yeah, I didn't want to answer at first because I'm not a data scientist, but I guess it's pretty similar. I just started my new role, so I'm still settling in. But normally, what we would do is gather requirements, see what game teams want, for example, what type of statistics they want to see on a dashboard, and then figuring out how we can build the backend. Speaking with data architects, data engineers to get the pipeline built so that we have the right data coming in, and then setting up. So we use Looker, so you have to do the ETL in LookML, and that part takes a little bit time figuring out what kind of model you need, and then visualizing the results on the dashboards. So for me, the main part is the dashboarding aspect. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Salva. Simon?
Yeah, so my role is pretty dynamic, but the aspects that are pertinent to data science include a lot of actually like needs analysis and requirements. And I think as you're in this program, you'll quickly realize that typing in like model.fit is actually the quickest part of the data science role. Most of it is everything surrounding that, like getting the data, making sure it's good and useful, making sure it's actually going to be able to solve the problem you have. So I've been focusing more on a lot of the surrounding work around that in preparation for some projects that we're looking and starting to program. So a decent amount of programming, lots of sort of writing and meetings, and making sure that our technology is going to be well suited to what we're trying to do.
There's something else I want to add, Milad.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
It's just my favorite thing about this program that I've had in the last like 4 years, working, with a bunch of developers, front end, back end, all these people, data architects, who are smarter than me in all these fields, is the fact that I know about probabilities through this program. It's like a superpower. It's like the moment I start talking about probabilities and like how to determine relevancy, it's like everybody else like is lost. And I'm like, oh, these variables are dependent. You can't do this. You have to. You're just wasting time here. So I would say that at least in my specific role in the last 4 years, leveraging probability knowledge and how to handle statistics has been very unique to my position in my organization. And I did not expect that. And I love it because it's like a superpower.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so we're out of time. So maybe really quick, your final kind of tips on if somebody wanted to apply for the program, what should they focus on? What should they do during the program to get the most out of it?
I would just reiterate the point of speaking to people. It's very important to talk to your peers, do your labs together. That's the best part about the whole experience. And attend all the workshops, as Simon also said. See, those things are important.
The extracurriculars, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I think when we're looking from an admissions perspective, I think it's really important to don't, as much as you think as much as you will want to, don't write what you think the admissions committee wants to hear. It is easy to tell if you're doing that. And on the other hand, really be genuine in your application, describing who you are and why you want to be in this program from a passionate perspective of like, no, this is why I'm here, this is why I want to do this, and this is what I want to do with it. And I think that kind of thing, I know we're not supposed to talk about admissions, but I think that kind of perspective can be a lot more helpful and makes your application far more genuine and representative of who you are. The program itself, I think, honestly, just commit to it. And you're there for a year. It's a very unique experience. And you kind of decide how much you can make out of it by how much you put into it. So yeah, best of luck to those who are looking to apply.
Thank you. Derek?
5 years ago, I was sitting at my kitchen table and I looked at my dad and I said, Dad, this is like 300, this is $30,000. Like, is this program worth it? Like, I don't know. And my dad told me something. He said, in 5-10 years, you're not going to think about that. And I would agree with his assessment. The program is totally worth it. I don't worry about that money that I had to sink in time. It was totally worth it. I would do it over again. Yeah, it's fantastic. Couldn't recommend the program enough.
Great. Well, thank you so much. On that note, we'll wrap it up. I would like to really thank everyone who attended and listened. Hopefully we answered most of your questions. Thank you, Salva, Simon, and Derek for being on the panel. Thank you very much for attending, and hope to see you later. Bye-bye.